everybody. It's Kia Stevens, and I am here with a new friend, Jami Amerine. Hi, Jami.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good. We're going to have a lot of fun because Jami is a bunch of fun. So let me just do some housekeeping real quick. If you guys have never joined me for a hangout, my name is Kia Stevens, and I'm the creator of the Father Swap blog. And the aim of this blog is to help women exchange their father wounds for the love of God, the Father. And we do this for women who have been wounded by their dad by way of divorce, abandonment, abuse, incarceration, drug addiction, alcoholism, death, or a physical presence but an emotionally absent dad. We exist to cover all subjects that pertain to father wounds. And so tonight I am honored to have Jami join us as we talk about foster care and father wounds, which I don't think we have to use much of our imagination to know that children in foster care experience father wounds. So I am honored and delighted to have her here to speak on the subject. And just in case you don't know Jami, I want to just share a little bit about her. This woman is amazing. And also a fabulous writer, I might add, which there's an exciting giveaway with this interview. Jami has been married to her husband, Justin, for 25 years. She is a mom to Maggie, John, Luke, Sophie, Sam, and Charlie. Who, did I get that right? Okay. Whom she affectionately calls the Vandals.
I
need to come up with some names for my children. She loves words, chocolate, coffee, painting, and real Jesus, which you will understand if you have read her book, Stolen Jesus. You will understand her term, real Jesus. And if not, there's opportunity for you at the end of this segment. Her and her husband have started all over with parenting by way of foster care and adoption. And recently she has launched her first book with Harvest House. That's the book I just referenced, Stolen Jesus, An Unconventional Search for the Real Savior. And she has a second book coming out in October, Sacred Ground and Sticky Floors, How Less Than Perfect Parents Can Raise kind of great kids. I need to get that. And then she just shared with me she has a third book deal. And this is going to be Sacred Temple Lumpy Thighs. Oh my goodness, that title right there is so good. But I mean, it's good that we can kind of laugh and talk about some serious stuff too, Jami. So I would love for you to just kind of get us started by talking about raising kids and your journey to adoption and then foster care.
Okay. Well, am I echoing?
A little bit, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I I always wanted to be a mom. My sister and I played house 24/7. I couldn't wait to be a mom. And I enjoyed it, thoroughly enjoyed it. And we homeschooled and kind of just had a pretty normal life. I had always been intrigued by adoption. When I was in the fourth grade, I had a teacher that had adopted a baby and she left mid-year. And I was fascinated by that. That somebody gave her a baby and she wasn't able to have babies. And so it interested me, I guess. And then Justin and I talked about it. We had a few incidences where like people had approached us. We had a friend that had a teenage daughter that was pregnant and we had said that we would do that. But then in 2010, my brother-in-law died in a car accident. He'd been our business partner and we lived on the same ranch together and everything. And we just went through a year of just horrible grief and sadness. And after that year, I just woke up one morning with this bright idea. I actually had a dream that there was a little girl in bed with me. And she said, "Good morning, Mommy." And I said, "Good morning, Allison." And I picked up my phone and I called Justin and I said, "I want to adopt a baby." And I said, I want the kids to know that even when things are sad and awful, that we are who we said we were and that we are people of joy. I don't want to be the poor Amarines. I want to be people of joy. And so 9 months from that day, we met Sam. We've had some weird run-ins with Allison, but that never happened. And I don't know what the intent of that was. I kind of do, which the name Allison is of noble birth. And in this journey, I feel like the biggest resounding gong in that is that we are all of noble birth. No matter what circumstances we come from, no matter who our Father is, our Father in heaven named us noble. And that is our birthright. And so I feel like that continues to be seen in this. So 9 months from that day, we met Sam, and he was 10 days old. He'd been in foster care for 10 days. And we brought him home, and we served him as a family with a joyful heart. He brought something to us. It sounds selfish because, of course, we went into it to serve, but he served us so well. He restored something in all of us. He united us, and it has been an amazing experience. And after the first year of that, I realized he was very young compared to everybody else, and we couldn't really afford to do the traditional adoption again. And so I knew somebody that had 2 little girls that needed adopted. And so I just said, well, we'll just foster to adopt them. And in my own powerful way, I tried to make that happen, and it didn't. And they were moved somewhere else. And then we got our first phone call for a placement in May. And I went to the hospital and sat up with him all night. He was injured and cried and was terrified and horrified and didn't know what was going to happen next. And that is Charlie.
Now, when you say with Sam, you met Sam, how did your paths cross? Did you go through the
Yes, we went through a private adoption process, and he was birthed by a Jane Doe that wasn't legal in the United States. She chose adoption for him, and but there was some legal stuff that had to go on, and there was a translator, a young woman named Ingrid, that was with her through the entire process and birthing process. She left the hospital immediately after giving birth, and Ingrid stayed and held him and talked to him and prayed for his family and they all called him Little Man, said that we'd be there soon. But that was Christmas. It was like the day after Christmas. And so it was actually right after the first of the year that we got the call that he had been in foster care for 10 days and that we had been picked for him and would we come get him. And on our way there, his birth mother showed up and asked if she could see him. So she sat with him and told him goodbye, and then we've never heard from her again. So.
And that was you adopted him.
We adopted him. That was the same agencies actually so Sam's adoption was through Christian Homes in Abilene, Texas, and we were foster parents through Christian Homes in Abilene, Texas as well.
Okay. And is it expensive? Is that expensive?
Private adoption is expensive. It is expensive. It depends on the agency and what you have allocated. We had that saved for something else. I can't even remember what. And that was my thing, is that I was like, what are we saving this for? We could use it to save a child in need. And that's what we did. But that was the only way I knew to do it. And then we knew of the foster to adopt situation. And so we went through that route. And that's how we met Charlie. And then that's how we also met the next placement that we had, which was, we call her Joy Baby. And we had her for 18 months and 2 days. And she left us in June to be reunited with her restored mother. So.
Yeah, this is a lot that you're saying now. I have ideas all the time or epiphanies like, oh, this is what God is saying. And then when I tell my husband, it's kind of like, no, the Lord maybe didn't tell you that. And
that's indigestion.
So
gas or something. Yeah, Justin says that too.
Justin was okay when you said.
No, he hung up on me. Yeah.
You left that out, Jamie. You left that out of the story.
I did actually. So he hung up on me. He went, "I'll call you back." Like, And then he called me back and he said, this year has been horrific. I'm exhausted. We have legal problems from the estate and a bunch of other stuff going on. I will do this. I will call the lawyer and I will tell him what we're talking about. But he said, that's all I can do right now. That's all I have to give. My brother's gone. My mother's got cancer. That's all I have right now.
Oh my goodness.
And he said, and you cannot nag me under any circumstances, because he said, lawyers don't call back. And he said, so that's the deal. And I said, okay. So he hung up, and not 2 minutes later, my phone rang, and I was, hello? And he said, Christian Homes of Abilene. And I said, he already told you? And he said, Jami, he answered the phone. His receptionist resigned yesterday because she was given a baby through Christian Homes of Abilene. And they'd been on a waiting list for about 9 months, and they picked up their son yesterday, and so he was answering his own phone.
What?
Yeah. And then 9 months from that day, we got Sam.
Wow.
So that time it wasn't indigestion. That time it was from the Lord.
Oh my goodness. So, okay. Now, how old is the baby now?
Sam?
Sam.
Sam is 6.
Sam is 6. So do you tell Sam that we're your adoptive parents? I've always wondered this, like how people decide to tell.
Well, he's Hispanic, so he doesn't look like us. So there's that. He says all the time, how come I'm brown?
But even sometimes kids don't notice. Well, not initially. Eventually, but not initially.
Initially, he does look like Justin, but then Charlie is just very white. I mean, Charlie looks a lot more like us. And then Joy Baby looked a lot like us, just light complected. So that was pretty obvious. And he said a couple of times, how come I'm this color and you're that color? And then like Charlie the other day said, do you remember when I was in your tummy and I used to kick you? And I was like, no, remember, you were in your birth mother's tummy. And he was like, no, I was in your tummy and you kept eating burritos. And I was like, no. Oh, wow. That was me. But it's a process of explaining that, but it's different. I think that people think that's like a scary thing to explain to somebody, but their birthright into our family is that they will always know who Jesus Christ is. And that seed, however Jesus chooses to flourish it, is their true birthright. That's who they are. And I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of them questioning where they came from, why they came that way, or anything else, because I know the end result is who they are in Jesus Christ. And I tell them that every day. So it's not, I guess it is confusing in some regards, but their identity every day that they're with us is their identity in Christ more so than it is in our family for us. And so I think that some of the stuff that we bring into adoption and foster care is the idea of what the world sees or what their damage is. There is no damage. There's no foul. There's no harm. These children belong to Jesus Christ. This is their home. And they have a history, and some of that might be hard. But at the end of the day, their identity is in Jesus Christ.
Woo, that's a lot, Jami. That's a lot. As a previous public school educator, that is a lot. And just having, I think it's a place where, one, you definitely need to be called to do. And I believe that God was calling you with the dream and with Allison and Noble Birth. And I think you have to reconcile. You have to count the cost and be willing to go the distance with the children that you bring into your family. And I think the gasp of when he said, I was in your tummy, is that same gasp I would have if my kids are like, where did kids come from? And it's like, oh, snap. You know, just the parenting, like, growth, the parenting growth of just having to have difficult conversations with your children that you don't always want to have. But that, Okay. So I hear what you're saying. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. None of us want to have hard conversations with our kids. None of us want that. But guess what? It's just the way the ball bounces. The hard things happen. And I think that one of the saddest things for me, and I speak this from a place of terror, so I have no problem telling you this story. When they called about Charlie, and it was 10 o'clock at night, they said, we have an injured 3-month-old baby boy at the hospital by himself. Will you come sit with him? And I said, is he adoptable? And the agent said, I don't know, Jami, but he's alone and he's hurt. And I said, oh, okay. But I said no. My initial instinct was, how is this going to hurt? How is this going to affect me? If he's not adoptable, I can't fall in love with him. I can't have this happen. I can't. And we're so about what looks normal, feels normal, isn't normal, and how it's going to affect us. We're missing out on huge opportunities to be a part of the bigger kingdom picture and answering hard questions and being afraid of these kids that are children. They're children. And we're afraid we're going to get, and people say it to me all the time. Oh, I could never do that. I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. And my response to that is normally to tell them that I said that to a 3-month-old who's now my son. And I am hurting. And I have a Father in heaven who loves me, and he's for me, and he's with me. And he did not say it would be easy, but he said he would never leave me. And that has been the truth of it. And in our comfort zones, it's hard to imagine. And, you have people say, well, aren't you worried they're going to burn down your house? Well, my biological kid almost burned down my house. They're not guarantees. They're human beings. And we have a calling that we're missing out on strictly out of fear, which I truly believe is an unhealthy fear of a Heavenly Father who promised to take care of us. And we go, yeah, he'll take care of us, but can he cover the hurt of losing a child? And very few of us would say, I'm not going to have kids because I'm afraid one of them is going to get hit by a bus or die from cancer. But millions of us say, I can't do foster care because I'm afraid I'd get hurt. It's
that yes. I don't know if I'm afraid. I think I've just seen a lot. Seen a lot.
It's freaking scary, but so's parenting. We have one of the man babies that still lives with us. He's 18. He has a full beard, and he comes.
Wait, what did you say? A man baby with a full beard?
Yeah, our son, our 18-year-old son.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Man, but he's not a baby.
He comes in our room in the middle of the night, and he's rifling through my nightstand. And my husband sits bolt right up in bed and goes, "Are you here to kill us?" And he wasn't, but he could have been.
That's not funny.
It happens all the time. So having kids is scary. There's no guarantees. There's no telling. But being afraid of being hurt is never the motivation to bear children. I mean, how many pregnant women do you meet that go, I'm so afraid I'm pregnant and I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt from the moment you go into labor, and it's going to hurt every day after that because you want great things for these human beings. And it just hurts. Life hurts. It hurts. But can you imagine what it's like for a child to have nowhere to go? That hurts.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mindset. Now, granted, here's another thing. If we're going to show our whole butts, I will show my whole butt. We're on respite from foster care. I don't know that we actually don't even know that we can do it where we live now. I have that, and that's one of the reasons I love to speak so candidly about, saying no to Charlie upon the first phone call, and saying that car pulling out of our driveway and that little girl leaving was horrific. It was the darkest moments of my life. Her hand on that window, all of it. It was horrible. And I have grieved, but I have grieved well in the arms of my Father. And I am not a superwoman. I am afraid of everything. And I am still here. It didn't kill me. And I have a friend, an author friend, that just buried her son a year ago. And I watch her and I think, it's completely different. He's gone forever. I'm not comparing the pain, but I've watched her grieve well. And as a society, I think that that's the thing that we're afraid of. We're afraid of grieving badly. or it being too much? Is it ever too much? Because grieving is just a sign that you loved well. It's a celebration of a loss, and that's a party. Yes, it's not the same party as birth, but it's still a party. It's still the memory and the loving. And how many of us, that's the other thing I always think, I wouldn't change losing that little girl. She went home to a restored mother. I poured into her mother. I poured into her. This is not the end of the world. Yes, I sat in my car a few days ago at Walmart because I saw a little girl run by with pigtails, and I cried so hard I was gagging. I miss her, but it's not the end of me. It is me and my Father in heaven carrying me through to that, you know? It just, life is, what is it, a bowl of cherries and I'm in the pits? It is, but I'm better for having known them. And who among us that have loved well and lost have ever been in a place where they'd go, well, I would never have done that, you know? I just don't think there's very many of us.
So I want to talk about some of those wounds that children come with. If you have experienced children that came with wounds from their father. I was reading some of the statistics just in preparing for this, like the number of children whose fathers were incarcerated or had some type of addiction. Have you experienced that, and how have you been able to love them to the point of them finding healing in the short time, if that's even possible, has been possible in the short time that they've been with you? And I don't know if Sam has experienced, or if you could speak to that.
Sam doesn't. He doesn't have any.
He's so small.
Right. Now, Charlie's birth father is a extremely intelligent, hardworking, decent man that loves this little boy. And he is a lot like his father, as far as like I see in him, and I encourage this in him too. He's very intelligent like his father. I mean, like his birth father had a really high IQ, or has a really high IQ, and we stay in touch with them. I think in other scenarios I've seen people have this, and we did have a short-term placement. This was actually really sad to me. This little girl, Bella, that was with us for just a couple of weeks, never missed a lick. From the moment she walked into our home, she called me mommy, and she called Justin daddy. She hung on him, climbed on him, loved. She'd sit and pat his beard. And the minute he came home, she ran into the child never missed a lick. Like, it was almost eerie. It was almost.
You think it's because she wanted a family? So
she wanted a family, so she just recognized it. It was like, we checked her in the first night, and she hadn't really said very much except mommy and daddy. She'd point to us and say mommy and daddy. And we checked her in, read with her and prayed with her, and then we're walking out of the room. We knew very little about her, how she slept or anything, so we didn't know if she was going to be upset. And she said, mommy, and I turned around and said, yes. And she said, thank you.
Oh, and wow.
Then she slept 12 hours. And I mean, we never had any issues with her. And the caseworker would come. She'd go straight to the caseworker. She recognized stability, I think, more than anything. It was something she identified with. But I think every case is different. And I had another friend that had a little boy that they just couldn't deal with him. And she had so much remorse and regret for that. But he ended up going somewhere else that worked. And I think that that's another reason that people get leery of foster care, is the idea that you can get in a situation that you can't get out of. And that's not necessarily true. As a matter of fact, we recently got a call, and a caseworker didn't realize that we weren't in the same county anymore. And she said, we'd like to replace this child with you. And for a moment, I had this panic. Okay, I've got to get back to that county, and I've got to fix this, and I've got to do this and this and this. And then all of a sudden I was like, God knows where I am. God knows where that child is. And God knows that I don't have my foster license right now. And I had to let it go. But a few years ago, I would have moved. I would have thought it was all about me and me fixing it and me making it right. And, this taskmaster God that was trying to mold me somehow by letting me hurt or making me serve or something like that, instead of just going to him as a loving father that was grieving for that child too, and knows that I care, but knows where I live, and knows that I don't have my foster license right now. And I think it's all of the things that we put back on ourselves that separate us from the mission of foster care, from knowing, even like now, like there's a part of me that, so especially when I hear stories, or I'm on a Facebook page and they'll have an update in our old county, and I want to be a part of that. But God knows where we are. He knows where we are in our healing process, and He knows what He has in mind for the next thing. And it's that next best thing, I think, that we're missing out on. The looking forward to serving in foster care is something I think a lot of people miss out on, is that to be a part of a child's restoration story, even if they leave, you're still part of that story. And what a blessing, what a blessing.
I had another friend. Well, I had one friend whose mother raised, adopted and raised someone, and it was very tumultuous.
Mm-hmm.
So she kind of has a bad stigma about adoption because of that experience. It was very tumultuous. And then another acquaintance that I spoke with, she adopted a little girl, and her trauma was so intense that she was a single woman fostering a little girl. It was so intense that she had to give her back, like what you just described with your family, and she felt such a great deal of guilt because she wasn't able to keep her, but she didn't have the tools, she didn't have the resources, and I think that's something to think about, because when I was teaching, my last year of teaching, there was a little girl there, and she was very violent. She could curse better than I have ever been able to curse. I mean, I've tried, but I could not curse like that. She would fight you. And she was a little bitty something. And I think, when you start dealing with father wounds or sexual abuse, molestation, just not really knowing what all the child has experienced. Those are challenges. Those are some challenges.
But I will say, we had teenage boys when we got into the adoption, and so we would not take.
Say it again.
We had teenage sons in our home when we went through the adoption process, and actually, our agency recommended that you never adopt anyone older than your youngest. And there's not always that, but I think that it's the idea that, and it is the idea that you can't say no. We would have never, with our teenage boys in the house, never brought in a 13-year-old girl that had been sexually assaulted. It wouldn't be fair to her, and it wouldn't be fair to our teenage boys. So I think that that's kind of the stigma that goes with it, is that if you're going to take in a foster child, you have to take in just anybody they bring. There can be something that's just not what God has intended for your family. But I think it's, too, some of that is saying yes, Lord, here I am. Yes. And then the common sense approach and the prayerful approach of going, yes, but that's not for me. That's not what's best for the rest of my children. That's not what's best for our family. And we had, there was actually at one point, we had to send one of our sons away to military school because he got in trouble with the law. And we had a phone call, and it was for 12-year-old twin boys. And I was like, yeah, wrong number. Como esta? I mean, I'm sorry. And I know that they found somewhere. And I think that that's even the opportunity to pray for those boys. I've prayed for those boys ever since I heard about them. And I know that they were recently adopted. It doesn't all have to hinge on us. And we don't all have to be the one that takes in a violent teenage boy. But there's some people that are perfectly capable of that, And so I think it's a matter of even saying, yes, Lord, to foster care, or yes, Lord, to adoption, but what do you have in mind for our family? And then letting Him show you, maybe it's just that you take casseroles to foster families. By all means, take casseroles to foster families. That's the work of the Lord. That's the hands and feet of Jesus. Do that. But then also be willing to go, you know what? Yeah, maybe this is a good place for this child. Maybe this is a good place, or maybe this is the right place to plant those seeds for a child with this. And even so, say it's you know, your husband had an experience, and I actually read something about this, a football coach, and one of his students was, needed a place to go, and the wife was terrified, and the husband was like, I think I can do this, and if you let me give you, let's just do this. And she was afraid of telling him no. She was afraid of letting him down. But when push came to shove, it was about the father and what that father did for that boy. So we all have different roles in it. And I think it's just the horror stories, and the very worst case scenarios. And there's a lot of them. There are a lot of them. And I always think that too, everybody thinks it's really funny and cute. We have this 6-year-old and this 4-year-old, but is everybody going to think it's cute when they're, 17 and 15 and they smell like armpit? I don't know. And, so it's, there's so much to it. There's a lot to consider, and I'm not being flippant about it. Some people are called to it and other people aren't. And I have a friend that said one time, she always thought that that's what God wanted, and door after door after door closed in their face every time they tried. And then later on, it ended up that they had 4 college students that needed to move in with them. And it was kind of a weird scenario, which you wouldn't necessarily see it as foster care, but they were able to step in and show the father's love. So I think there's no place for guilt, and there's no place for shame, but there's also no place for fear. If you're really thinking about it, if you're really considering it, fear should be the last factor that motivates you or stops you from doing something.
And I think the option of choice, that's really good what you just said, that you get to choose whether or not this would be a good fit for your family and for the kids that you already have living in your household. And because I think there's so much I just don't know, and I have a heart. I'm like a mama bear, where I do love children. I mentioned it to my husband. That was one of the That's what where he's like, that's not God. No, he didn't say that, but it's so many words. He was like, we're not doing that. And even now, I mean, like, I just have 2, and I'm kind of like, Lord, I'm barely making it. I'm barely homeschool is about to kill me. Yeah. But anyways, I lost my train of thought. But yes, choice. I think that's key when you're talking about the children and what their prior experience has been in the fit. Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, there's those horror stories. We had somebody say, well, we knew a family that brought in a teenage boy and he molested their daughter. Okay, right there. There's no teenage boys allowed in my house. I have a teenage girl. I'm not going to take in a foster boy that's old enough to overpower my little girl. I'm not. She has to be foremost in my mind. And that's not my hill to die on. And there's a God that is bigger than me that can find that boy a home. And that's my prayer. It doesn't all have to hinge on us, And I really do think that that's one of the things that stops so many people from considering foster care is they think, how am I going to handle this, and this? And they're leaving out the factor of a higher power that called us to something bigger than us and is more than capable of handling these things, including healing someone who feels like they failed a child. You don't think of course he's there for her. He knows the horror of that. I mean, how heartbreaking if you had to send away a child that you had every intention of helping. He's still for you. He's still with you, and he can go with that child and he can take care of it. He's big enough for all of the things that scare us.
And so with that, could you just talk about some of the challenges that are facing the foster care system in the United States, as well as adoption? Because I don't know. I'm sure there are others that may be watching now or watch the rebroadcast that are not aware.
There's a lot. I think one of the biggest factors is that we get very, very, very reunification focused as far as a lot of the courts, that's the hill they die on. They need to be with their family. And I think especially as believers, we see our family as the family of God and bring it on, expand our borders, make us bigger and greater. I'm all for restoration. If it is healthy for the child. I think one of the worst things facing foster to adopt families and those children is that we're too many chances. You know, if you're at month 11 and you've still got somebody that is not met any of their requirements, let that child move on. You know, it's not fair to the child. It's not fair to the family, because it's really not forcing them to face what they're about to lose. If we keep going, oh, 6 more months, 6 more months, 6 more months, it drags out the stability.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
So usually when you have a placement, the court will say, okay, the mom has, or the parent has, this long. This is how long the case is going to run. It's usually a year. But sometimes we hit a year and the judge goes, well, 6 more months. And then, well, 4 more months. And they keep dragging it out instead of going, you know what, you're clean and have a job and you're doing these things within the next X months or you're done. And it really is just the padding of it. I just see, and I hear this from a lot of people. We were going back to court, and it's been 18 months. This child's been with us for 18 months. And
was it false hope for the child?
I think it is, and it's a sense of insecurity. And then what happens too? I mean, even with Charlie, he was, we didn't know for months and months. And there kept being extensions and extensions and extensions, and there was no progress on one end, and so it made no sense to keep it on going like that. There'd been no progress. And I understand that that's scary, but at the same time, what are you willing to do for me? And that comes from I come and say that, with all humility. For me, I can't think of very many things that I wouldn't do to protect my child. And that's sad that we get, drug abuse or any of these things that drag us so far down that we can't get it back out, even for these kids. But then for the kids, let's move on to the next thing. And I really do think that comes down to the courts. And, maybe even you got a year. You have a year. That's how long you have. And then no more extensions, because it's torture for the family. It's torture for the kids. And I really do think in some ways that if that were the option, those choices would be made better. That instead we have repeat offenders and kids being taken in and out of homes for the same circumstances over and over and over again, and another chance and another chance and another chance, as if that tumultuousness is better than the stability of being adopted. And I think that's just because we have some negative connotations that go along with adoption and foster care,
That's so it's so challenging. The environment that I taught in, many of the children had tumultuous home lives, and really the perception of defects is like, if it's not life or death, leave them there, because you don't want to bring them into the foster care system where we don't have placements for them, or they got to go to a group home. They could be further traumatized, even more. And I will say there were things that I witnessed and I was just like, whoa, that's bad. But my kids were, many of them, anesthetized to some of the behaviors that for me were traumatic. That it was like, this is my normal. Mm-hmm. This is and to pull them out of that would be more painful. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay either. But I'm saying to pull them out of a home life that was, from my vantage point, traumatic, would be more traumatic to place them in a foster care system where they could potentially get a home that was more stable, but was still foreign from their normal, if that makes any sense. So I totally hear what you're saying. I guess, and there's that hope that maybe the judge is holding on to hope, or the system is holding on to hope that this time this parent is going to make it through. They're going to remain sober. They're going to stay clean or whatnot. That's my assumption. The only way to understand, stringing a child, say, well, we'll go 6 more months, or just trying to hope for the child to be able to be back with their biological parents.
Yeah. And I mean, ideally, that, certainly restoration is, we serve a God of restoration, and that is for the best. But I do think sometimes we just take it on too long. And so many cases where these newborns are removed because they're test positive for drugs. They're in a home for a year, a foster home for a year, given back to the parent, and then 2 years later are back in the foster care system.
Wow.
And, it's sad because we live in, drugs are a huge problem. But at what cost do we keep up that insanity? Repeating the same thing over and over and over again and putting them in danger. I think that's scary. And, we didn't have a child leave us that was going to go into a bad situation. Joy Baby's mother is somebody I love and respect. I miss her. I miss the baby. But she was clean. She was restored. And I trust God with that. I think that is paramount in this. What do we trust God with? Do we trust him with our hearts? Do we trust him with the hearts of these children? And do we trust him to use us to be the catalyst for change? And truly, your mission, which is beautiful, is exactly that, of understanding what a good father. He's just good. And we have this mixed lingo of, well, God's trying to teach you something, or God's trying to do this or this. No, God's not a crappy father. He's a good father. He loves us. He's for us. He's with us. He's for our restoration. He's for our growth. He's for us. And we get him mixed and muddied up with court systems and bad daddies and crappy uncles and molesting neighbors and all of these things, and trying to make him into something he's not. And when we can fall at the feet of a good and loving restorative father, the things that scare us, foster care or a botched adoption or losing a child or any of those things, are a lot less terrifying when we know the end result. And the end result is that we will be with him forever. And he's for us here now to heal, bind up the brokenhearted, and take care of us. And I really do think that that's the biggest missing piece in our foster care system when it comes to the church, is that we have a church that's afraid of this God who is totally for us and with us. He asks us to do a few things. Love, you love, that's your command, go and love. And we're afraid to love because we're afraid we're going to get hurt.
Oh, Lord. That's your next book, Jami. You just said a lot. I think that, yes. I think we are also afraid of what this God that I have placed in my nice, neat box is going to require of me that is not in the box. So I want to keep it nice and neat and controlled and typical, what I'm used to, but I cannot control this child that I don't know coming into my home. And that's a lot what you just said. That I should, but I was saying I should have captured it, but I'm like, I have video. So that's a great segue to what can the church do that the church is not doing to lean into this issue of foster care and adoption a little bit more.
Well, I think for one thing, stop preaching fire and brimstone. He's a good father. He's good. He's so good. And so we get in this mindset of thinking that he's out to get us or teach us a harsh lesson. So if you're in that mindset and the harsh lesson is he's going to give me a child and then he's going to take it from me. Okay, just for a minute, think about that. So he's going to hurt you and a child just to teach you a lesson. It's the same. It's some of the church lingo that we have. I think that's so dangerous. Is when my brother-in-law died, a woman walked up to me and she said, "Boy, you need to be watching out. God must be trying to teach you something." And at the time, I believed it. But you think about that for a minute. So my brother-in-law was killed in a horrific car accident in his late 40s to teach me a lesson. I mean, if he was going to kill somebody and turn them to shreds, why not me? If I'm the problem, why isn't he dealing with me exactly? But it's that mindset. It's those little nudges that we get, that something harsh is happening, that God is spraining ankles and crashing cars and killing babies and handing out brain tumors. to teach us something. Now, he may allow those things so that we can walk through and be better for them, but how much control do we really have over the forces of the world? And when we step away from that belief that that car accident wasn't caused by God, yes, okay, he allowed that, and this is where he's going to walk through me with it. When it comes to opening our hearts to the charity that we're called to, loving well, loving one another, loving our neighbor, that's the last thing we should be afraid of. But as long as we're thinking, it's even, this, I saw something the other day, and this preacher was like, talking about abortion, which I hate abortion. I hate abortion. I'm sorry that it goes on, but God's wrath was handled on Calvary. He died for us. He loved us so much that he came and did this thing for us, so that the multitude of sins could be covered, and that he would walk through anything with us, and nothing can separate us from his love. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. And we say that in one breath, and we hear it from the pulpit. But if you had an abortion, or if you're involved in a homosexual relationship, sex outside of marriage, we have a list of things that just might separate us from the love of God. And that's a scary God. And that's a humanized God. Because as parents, there's some things that I don't like. I would like to think there's not anything that would separate me from loving my children. But I'm just human, So there's things that push me over the edge with these kids. And there's things that happen where I've not been my very best parent. He's a perfect parent. And until we embrace that, until we stop saying out of our mouths, nothing can separate us from the love of God, except nothing can separate us from the love of God. Nothing can separate us. When we start believing from that place of grace and understanding and fully embrace the message of the cross, nothing can catch up to the cross. He is for us and he's with us. He is for even in my worst, my sin is not the focus. He is the focus, and he is going to redeem me. He is going to make changes in me. When we come to that Father, everything changes about what we are capable of walking through. He's just a good Father. And there are so many. Now, me personally, and I want to make sure you understand this, I had and still have an amazing earthly father, and I have an amazing husband, and he parents well. So perhaps it is easier for me to see, but I served a wrathful, ticked off God for years and years and years, and didn't do a lot of things and did a lot of things thinking I was trying to please him or appease him. You and I talked about my book, Sacred Temple, Lumpy Thighs, and I was telling you that that's the message, is that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Not our pant size, not breast reduction, not a breast increase. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. And I think the best way to look at that from a human perspective is, if I weighed 700 pounds, my dad would be concerned for me, and he would want better for me, but he would not stop loving me. And it's all of these conditions that we have put in the box that you're talking about that separate us from this fullness, this peaceable, loving God, because we've shoved all the things that are actually our characteristics or our father's characteristics or our uncle's characteristics and put them on the head of the Son of Man. And he's just Jesus. And he just died for all of us. Once for all, it worked. The blood worked. And in that place of being well cared for, being well parented by a Heavenly Father that loves us, we are capable of much more than we ever could have imagined.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm currently going through the book of Romans, and in Romans 13, where you like Romans? Yeah. Romans is challenging for me to understand, so I'm glad I'm making my way through. But where Paul says, love your neighbor as yourself. That, or he quotes Jesus saying that's challenging. I mean, that's challenging, and I think that you get revelations of this. Like when I first started walking with the Lord, but I've been in church my whole life, so that's not good. I haven't been walking with the Lord. Anyways, I'm saying from juncture to juncture, I grow in my understanding of what love is and what it looks like to love Kia, so that Kia can love somebody else as she loves herself. First, we need to evaluate, is Kia loving herself? Right. Because if Kia's not loving herself, then she's going to love other people with her understanding of love that she has for herself. Mm-hmm. So, and that's so it's an individual understanding of love, and then it's a collective understanding of love. I think, for us as a church, and what you're saying, some of those bad raps that the church has now, we're not all the time known for our love, but we are known for fire, brimstone, or hypocrisy, or hatred, or bigotry, or you name it, we are known for it. So I think that revelation of love would reveal that we are capable of so much more as it relates to taking care of the fatherless and the orphans and the widows, which is, what does it say? That's the greatest. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not the greatest, but I'm paraphrasing. Y'all read your Bible, because don't get it from me. What'd you say, Jamie?
Put your Bible out. Don't ask us.
Yes, your Bible. So as we're kind of winding down, because I really want you, and you said this before, that you were thinking you were going to be serving Sam, but it turned out that Sam was serving you and your family. I would really love for you to kind of rest on some of the lessons that you have gotten from Sam and from Charlie and from Joy Baby, and just what has God shown you, about himself, about love, as we're talking about having a revelation of what real love is. Can you share that as we are winding down?
I always confess, I did go into foster care and adoption to create joy. I was going to make it happen. We were going to be people of joy and serving. And then I thought, if I serve well, then God will not let anybody else die, or nothing bad will happen, And with Sam, we all fell so in love with him, and he needed us, but we needed to serve him, and we just served him well. And then by the time Charlie came around and Joy Baby, it was like so much of the fear was gone, and I'd fallen into the message of grace and come to the understanding for the first time in my life that the blood worked, and they were part of that journey, that no matter what happened, whether Sam was staying, but even if something were to happen to one of my kids, that the blood worked, that the story, he's the end of the story. He's the beginning and the end of the story. And I think especially with Joy Baby, I can't even believe that I survived that. And I didn't just survive it, but I survived it well, because I did it at the feet of my Lord. I think that we get in this mindset of, what's God trying to show me? What's he trying to teach me? What's he trying to refine in me? Instead of this child that I loved from the time she was 3 months old until she was 18 months old, or she's older than that, 20 months old, is gone from my life. And I'm going to grieve that. And I'm going to grieve that with Jesus. He's not showing me anything except that he loves me. And he loved her, and he loved her mother. And that story wasn't some horrific thing to teach Mama a lesson, or me a lesson, or the baby a lesson. He's just for us and with us. He just wanders our halls and searches our hearts and wants the truth of us to come out. And actually, I didn't like myself. I didn't have the confidence to write or speak or do any of those things, or foster care or any of those things. But understanding a perfect father, a perfect love, nothing can separate me from the love of my Father, is a way of falling in love with yourself. He delights in me. And then that overflows into these children. And I mean, I'll be honest, and I know other people that have said this, when you have a long-term foster placement, that bonding is different. And so sometimes I've panicked that I'm not loving perfectly, or that, I didn't bond perfectly. And then all of a sudden I just go, but Jesus, Jesus, fix this. Jesus, show me. Jesus, be in me and over me and all. I say it to my kids all the time. Jesus, be all over you. And I'll even do that, when I'm having some of these doubtful feelings. Jesus, be all over me. Jesus, be all. And He is perfect love. We say that. My sister always says this about the love is patient, love is kind. It does not boast. It does not, all those things. That's Jesus. I'm Jami, and Jami has little patience, and she gets irritated, and she gets jealous, and she gets all those things. But Jesus is perfect love, and He casts out all fear, and He loves perfectly, and He oozes out of you to the point that your cheeks hurt. When you truly focus on Him instead of constantly focusing on me and looking at my belly button and seeing what's wrong with me and seeing how I can serve Him better and seeing how I can love better, instead of just going, okay, just Jesus, be all over me in this situation where I'm not my best. I'm not my best at something and I'm in an awkward situation. I love to grab that. Jesus, be all over me and show me how to love like you love. And I'm never going to get it completely right, but He already did. It's contagious. It's what people should see in us, I think, is, as far as the church goes, is this abundant love that isn't about judging, and it is loving ourselves well enough that pours over into other aspects of our lives. Mm-hmm. And I mean, people have asked me, do you love your adopted children like you love your biological children? No, I love all of them differently because they're all different and unique. The way that my Father in heaven loves me, and He loves you for different reasons. It doesn't have to be measured in human terms. It's completely different with everybody. Sam was at a junction in our lives where we needed healing, and he came and he healed, and God used that, and He developed a love from that. Charlie was at a different stage, and he came and we served and we changed and we grew and we were afraid, and God never forsaked us and He never left us, and now He will nurture that and He'll come through, and that's a relief. If you think about what we don't have to do to love well, what we have to do, the thing we do is accept the love of the Father, really accept it, let it drench us, and then it oozes out onto that neighbor that you literally can't stand, or a crazed kid, or any of those things. I think it's the idea that I have to love my neighbor and he's the worst. Well, no, I have to love Jesus, and Jesus, be all over me and flow through me and show me what you want for my life and for the lives of my children. And all of a sudden, He might show you something that He sees in that neighbor that is lovable. It doesn't mean you have to be best friends with him. And it doesn't mean you have to go out and adopt, 12 inner city kids. It just means letting Him, instead of trying to control what He wants for your life, letting Him just be Jesus, and then letting Him flow out of you. And then the natural occurrence of foster care, adoption, teaching, taking a casserole to a foster family. I'll say it again. There's your plug, foster families. I'm trying to get you casseroles. But, just letting Jesus be Jesus.
I think that's so good. I have so many takeaways. Jami, I really appreciate that you said that you did. I thought you were going to say, when people ask me, do you love your foster care, your adoptive son the same as your biological? I thought you were going to say, I love all kids the same, because I don't know where I've heard that, but I've heard it. But I appreciate you saying that you love them out of their uniqueness, because that is most certainly how God loves us. And thank goodness, because I got a different personality. So I need all kinds of different love from Jesus that y'all don't need, because y'all are more Christ-like than I am. But so I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate you also saying that it's not all a love you have to will. You have to kind of figure out, like, am I loving good enough, or am I measuring this love on this barometer or whatnot? But I'm loving God, and out of my love for Him and His love for me, what I need to love others flows naturally. It's not a force, like, I will love you. Yeah. So good. And this subject, we probably just barely scratched the surface. But I do want to say, you guys, I am giving this book away. Let me say this about Jami. Y'all, I don't say this about a lot of people. Jami is a serious writer. I mean, she has captured her voice in such a way that you literally feel like you are sitting across the coffee table from her, and you laugh out loud. I mean, it's good. So I want to say I'm giving a book away. All you have to do is put your I want this book and tag me, Kia Stevens, and I am going to do a raffle and give the book away. I'll message you with this book. So if you are interested in a freebie, I love free stuff. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if it's a donut from Krispy Kreme. I love free stuff. So you guys get in. And then now, if you want to know more about Jami, how can everybody connect with you?
Okay, you can find me at sacredgroundstickyfloors.com. You can email me at sacredground.stickyfloors@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook, and it's Jami Amerine's Sacred Ground Sticky Floors, or Twitter, Jami Amerine, or Instagram, Jami Amerine. I'm pretty easy to find at this point. And actually, also my book is on the Easter special right now for $2.99 for the ebook. I like a book. I like to feel the book, you know.
Yeah.
But there's some ebook readers out there, so it's on special right now on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and but my website is sacredgroundstickyfloors.com.
Awesome. So, and then if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you can just check out the description section of the video, and I will put all of Jami's info there. You can connect with her. So I want to say thank you for joining me, and let you guys know that next month, I got to look so I make sure and get her name right. Next month, I'm going to be talking with Candace Ragland, and she has an amazing story. She's written several books. I think she just wrote her third book, and all about the absence of a father. So please come back and join me. Thanks so much. I'm Kia Stevens. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.